Howard.
Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We are live from Bourbon Street.
You look like LMAFO or whatever, like the party.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Guys. The party
Never heard of
rocking.
them. Party Rock is in the house tonight. No, this city, honestly, my only take for the Super Bowl, Andy, number one, they just need to have it here every year. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous that it's not in New Orleans every year. This is the clearly the best city for this, and it's not close.
It's the city they've had it the most times.
It's clearly the best. It is not even close. Everything is walkable. It is just quintessentially the perfect entertainment city. Food is amazing.
It's funny too, because the one I didn't go to the game or anything, but I went to Scottsdale, loved it, loved the vibe of that city.
Sure.
But, I was listening.
Well, that's because the Waste Management Open was fucking awesome.
Well, I mean, that was awesome too. But it's just a good town. Like, that's a good town.
Yes.
I was listening to a different podcast. I don't listen to that many football ones. I listen to a few. Bet the Board, like those guys.
Sure.
And they brought it up too that they, that they weren't going to this because they can't hang anymore, which is kind of where I'm at too. Like, I don't know if I can drink like I used to. But they brought up the next two ones. No, Drew, stop. They brought up the next two ones. Horrible cities for a Super Bowl. San Francisco, and they brought it mostly because the stadium is so far away from it. And then in 2 years, Los Angeles, where great, but the city center and all the stuff is not by SoFi. It's not good walkable stuff at all.
No,
it's funny too. A good one is like Indianapolis has a cool downtown, and the combine is fun. The weather sucks. I mean, if you want to go have a cold weather one, I don't think we'll ever do one again.
I will tell you, Andy, you're claiming you're washed. You would be thriving here. I am so mad I did not aggressively twist your arm to just calm down. We could have done our things anywhere. This place absolutely rocks. It's the greatest. I went to here's a real fun, do you want to talk Super Bowl or do you want to hear stories? Because I can do either one.
So I will say it better be a good story, because the content I've enjoyed the least.
Yeah.
From everybody who's, everyone's been asked to write way more content and put out more content.
Sure.
They're supposed to this year.
Sure.
And because it's Super Bowl week, a lot of people have put out like, here's the best places to go and eat when you're in New Orleans. Like, it's like that is for 1 out of 10,000 people. Like, who did you write this for? Like, why did you put this in the newsletter? The only acceptable use of that was PFT commenter. Continually, he would post pictures of gumbo and then do reviews in French. That was the other thing. But yeah, I would go ahead. We'll do a story and then I'll tell you the format we're gonna do.
Okay, well, I am not especially sober, and the reason is I was on a mission today to find like the best oyster, and I kind of got stumped on Monday and Tuesday. Like, I'm a huge oyster guy. Really love charcoal oysters. Really wanted to find a good one, and I wandered into a place that had been recommended called Cochon, and it was very, very quiet. Sorry, hang on a second.
If you're listening in podcast form, Drew is now giving someone directions. I believe he's pointing off into the distance. I think he's helping someone.
It's classic. It's classic. Sorry about that. But wandered into a place that had very highly recommended oysters. It was quiet. It was dead. In fact, I thought it was closed.
It's like when we got oysters in Vegas. Like, we're the only people in the restaurant.
Only people in the place.
Except for that
this
diver.
Can't be right. I was like, except for the diver who was cleaning the fish tank. Right. It was the same kind of vibe. And I was like, where is everybody? What's happening? And he was like, well, there's been a buyout tonight, but I can't tell you who bought us out. I was like, oh, okay. Well, give me the
Am I
oysters.
allowed to be here?
I'll have a martini and the oysters, and I'll leave whenever you say. And he's like, all right, no problem. And so the bartenders were all bored, just waiting for the party to start. And they were like, pulling like random like top shelf stuff, and they were like, yeah, you should try this. If you like that, try this. And like we just had a great time chumming it up. It turned out eventually they like kind of spilled the beans. Tom Brady had the buyout, and he was having like a big party there that night. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, that's like the level of like celebrity at this place, and it's just this random place in the middle of like the warehouse district. And they were like, oh yeah, we had a buyout with like Kendrick Lamar last night and Brady tonight, and I'm just like, this is crazy. And it's like, okay, so like, can I work behind the bar and just like people watch tonight or what? And then I was like, actually, never mind. I have an important podcast I have to get to, so I got to go.
I can't bartend for free tonight.
I can't bartend for free tonight, but they did have an incredible ice shaver, and I was like, I can make some tiki drinks that would knock your socks off. I was giving him tips on how to make Black Manhattans. It was a scene, so it's been a fun day, and there is a lot of fun things to do in New Orleans. Get in trouble.
God damn it! Yeah, I kind of wish I'd put partying. I do have stuff. I have stuff to do this weekend. Like I do have some family obligations.
I looked at the calendar and I kind of knew this was like going to be the last super fun one. Yeah. And I really wish I had twisted your arm to come. I'm sorry, man.
You know what we're doing next year for the Sanford? Well, we need to go to Waste Management again. That is just so fun.
Surely, for sure. Oh, Pebble Beach on the way in.
Yeah.
Next year.
2 weeks on the coast.
Pebble Beach on the way in. No, that's not even 2 weeks. Pebble Beach was the front end.
Yeah.
Right?
No, Waste Management is on Super Bowl week.
No, but the front end is Pebble Beach. So you start in Pebble Beach and then you drive to San Francisco.
Are you saying like a whole week of drinking on the West Coast?
If you want to carry on to wine country, I know some good places.
Yeah, I think we can manage. We'll figure something out. But I had trouble with this podcast, and I wrote it in a newsletter yesterday. I was like not excited for this Super Bowl. And I was mad at people who were saying that on Twitter after, oh, this is dumb. I might not even watch. I said, that's the most asinine thing ever. And then you get like a week into this 2-week thing, and I'm like, oh no, like this doesn't have any juice for me. I'm not excited like at all. And it felt dumb. I spent some time on props. I spent some time looking at, the game and prepping and stuff. And it's crazy. I've pushed that. I've pushed those aside. I'm fine now. But a lot of it has become the same thing I just talked about with the some of the content. It's like people are just putting anything they can out there because there's 2 weeks of content to fill. And I've read too much shitty Super Bowl content, too many bad takes. And I'm like, God, what are we going to even do for a podcast? Because like these are teams we've talked about for 20 weeks. This is a matchup that essentially we broke down in 2023 and 2022 because they played the Super Bowl. This is a regular season matchup. The teams weren't that, I guess, weren't that different from a standpoint of rosters, but obviously a lot has changed since that Super Bowl. I kind of wanted to just wish cast the 4 different scenarios, and there's a million scenarios, but let's just go the main 4. We go Philly and under, Philly and over. Maybe a blowout, maybe a track race. You go with KC and under, KC and over. And we just spend a little bit of time on all 4 of those and kind of talk about how that happens. And because I don't think we're going to change anyone's mind on a side or total. If you haven't decided who you like in this pick'em, if you haven't decided if you agree with the steam or not, I think maybe you should probably just start betting coin flips and Gatorade and stuff with us. Cause I don't know, like I'm not saying you're like a bad handicapper. You're bad at this. It means you probably aren't convicted enough to make a bet. And you don't need to. It's one game. It's like, it's like us just haranguing you over a Thursday night game in October. Like, why aren't you betting this? You don't have a side in this Colts Titans game. Are you a fucking idiot? So I think we'll go through that. And what I mean by go through those scenarios, kind of talk about what props and what long shot props would be good in those. And I'll let you, we'll just go draft. You start, which of those scenarios, Chiefs over, Chiefs under, Eagles over, which of those sounds the least enticing for your portfolio? And we'll start with that.
Chiefs under.
Yeah, Chiefs under, I think too. Actually, Chiefs over would kill me because I do like the under as well. But so Chiefs under, and I'll give my little synopsis on what I think that happens, and a lot of it is based on probably the injuries that you have to the middle of the offensive line for Philly becoming a major problem. The cover three becoming a problem for Hurts when he has to, get down to his third or fourth reads, and he didn't decide if he's going to take off or he's going to a guy's going to be right in his face. They turn into a spot where it's still low scoring, but they're behind by at least 7 to 10 points. So they do have to get away from the run a little in the second half. And there's some turnover. I think in this scenario, there's probably some turnovers from the Eagles side, maybe not just interceptions. And, obviously the way that Vic Fangio is going to approach this, we're probably going to see a lot of what Kansas City's done all year, the classic Eric Eager crossing the street 100 times, but they're so good at it. It's fine. And if you want to give them the underneath stuff, they're fine with that, even though they can't essentially run the ball at all right now. So I don't know where would you go with some props? Don't even have to be long shots, but I think that's the most fun is like envisioning a scenario like that and then saying what cashes big in something like that.
I would say it's probably Chris Jones MVP. That cash is big in that.
I like that too, because besides the top three names, basically everything else in the MVP market is a long shot, essentially.
That's right. And so if you feel like this is Chiefs under, I would just say go get some like 60 whatever to 1 for Chris Jones. And the reason I would say that is like in that world that you're describing, it is literally that the Eagles offense just consistently stubs their toe, and that Barkley's not breaking explosive runs. When he is breaking runs, they're 4-5 yards, and then Hurts is in 3rd and 6 and is just a freaking dead duck and gets sacked. Right. So it's like that world where the Chiefs win and this stays under, and this is a terrible Super Bowl. To me, kind of spells they find a reason. Like in this world, the game is over in like the third quarter, right?
Yeah, it's a bad second half.
It's a bad second half.
The least watchable version of the Super Bowl.
The least watchable. The game is over, and literally people who are trying to write about it are like, well, I need something to write about. How about the fact that like the real distinguishing characteristic of this Super Bowl was the defense for the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo and the way he created unique pressures. And who is the anchor of all of that is Chris Jones. And so that is kind of the way that I would play that. And if you want to play Chris Jones MVP and you want to, SGP it, Hurts sacks over, Hurts turnover,
Hurts attempts over.
I was
just going to pivot into like some
sort
of SGP based on how the Eagles offense looks in this scenario. And it is probably, if they're trailing, Hurts throws more than he should. I think it's like 27, 28 attempts, something like that. So Hurts attempts over, probably Hurts rushing over, because he's going to, I know those are a little negatively correlated because those are dropbacks where he's probably running instead of throwing. I don't know if you'd get any bonus for negative correlation. I doubt it. But then probably Barkley under. And then,
that's such an inflated number anyway. If you like the Chiefs to win, you might as well play Barkley under.
So you play Kansas City money line, Hurts attempts over, Barkley under. Someone has to score. Someone has to do something. And again, if he's throwing a lot, it feels like a Goddard game. Goddard, sorry. I get it. You're in the French Quarter, Pertnier. So
yeah, Goddard sounds right to me.
Goddard, my children need wine. I like that, like some sort of fun SGP just based on how you think that offenses go. I don't know what the SGP would be for Kansas City. I think in all the scenarios, basically all 4 scenarios, the Kansas City Chiefs offense looks the same. It's just this. It's basically, how do they do in the red zone? Does Butker kick 5 field goals, or do they draw something up that beats this defense? Are they able to run the ball little? Because I know Kareem Hunt isn't good, but he's still a bruiser.
He's had some spunk lately.
I mean, he's not gonna break one and like beat the guy to the edge, but short yardage shit, he's fine. Pacheco is just a shell of himself, which is, I mean, it was the injury. It was he might look totally different come spring training, or excuse me, summer camp, spring training.
I feel like if you talked yourself into this quadrant, you marry what we've just said with Chris Jones MVP, Hurts sacks over, Hurts attempts over, and you call it a day. And that is probably going to get you something in the 300 to 1 ballpark.
I have no idea. I gotta like pull up FanDuel or something. Look at this. By the way, speaking of that, if you are playing props, I obviously if you're listening to this in podcast, I've already talked to our friend Dean over there, but the Profit Exchange numbers are quite good. Our friends Profit X. They didn't have this kind of props 3 weeks ago, but they did put up like 500 props, and there's some pretty juicy prices on basically all the things you're gonna want. And if you want to get a little bridge divey, bridge jumpy, I mean they have all the no's for like MVP. If you want to get silly on that, or even no's on touchdown scores, I mean, you get a plus number on Saquon not to score. If you really feel that's how that goes. And then Patrick has a good point before we move on. Sacks over 4.5. It's probably good in any of these quadrants. You know, we saw this matchup 2 years ago. The fucking Sodfather ruined the Eagles defense. This is just as good of a pass rush as that one, but they're playing on a good indoor turf field. They should be getting off fast and not slipping around. And it doesn't matter what they do and push Tooney out there and, try this, try that. They don't have good tackles. This is an offensive line that's going to have some issues with what Fangio throws at them. So over 4.5 sacks, that might go in the account, Patrick. I like that a lot. Becton might give up 5 in his own. Yeah, there's some issues on the outside for Kansas City. And even if they're healthy, I don't think they're going to be 100% in the interior offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Carter did have some issues with illness today, but it's Wednesday. But he's got a few days to get better. Hopefully he's not Ludwig Abear sick.
I just got to tell you, man, the vibes here are very, very I mean, outside of the betting and the pick sphere, the vibes here are that the Eagles are very, very sharp and focused. This is very much. I am subject to hearing what I want to hear because I've already backed the Eagles, and so I've been picking and choosing the kind of the information that is kind of fortifying my case. So take this with a grain of salt, but believe me when I say that the vibe of all the public media the Eagles have done has been like, this defense is looking very focused. This is not we're just happy to be here. This is, a life experience, blah, blah, blah type of shit.
I like that because that is where I lean to. I guess let's go to the other one. Let's go to Chiefs and over before we get to the good ones, because I almost wish we disagreed a little bit, but I've done zero research that has pushed me away from the Eagles. I mean, and I've tried to keep I try this all year. I try to keep a level head. I take information in all the time, especially in golf. Every week in golf, there's some guy I love, and I push him right away. Hey, this is a guy I'd bet. This is a guy I'm betting. This is a guy I might use for one and done. And then I dig in a little deeper and be like, oh my God, I can't bet on this guy. Like it happens every week. Multiple golfers. You have to keep that open mind. You have to take in new information and be Bayesian about it, I guess, huh? But there's nothing that's pushed me away from the Eagles now. So we're very much in agreement. But let's talk Kansas City in the over. I should do timestamps for this. So 19.
Honestly, Kansas City in the over, the most obvious one is Mahomes MVP, but even more than that, it's just like all over. Right? Like if that's the game state, and if this is like, both teams are that successful offensively, I don't think this is squeaking over 49. I think we're talking about like both teams are like threatening 30, right? There is a very small slice of the distribution where the Chiefs win by just, being so successful that they score enough to get the total over. But I really have a tough time seeing that. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if and when the Chiefs are winning this game by more than 15 points, like they just fucking eat the clock, right? And so a Chiefs margin by more than 12 to me is going to be extremely tough for them to make 50 points. What about you?
Yeah, I think if we end up on the over with Kansas City covering, winning, Philly has a bunch of success on the ground, and we've seen that. If it's a game state where they're able to keep running,
not success, explosive, right?
Explosive success. Well, and it's been a bad run defense for like the last 10 weeks. Like not just this isn't a good run defense anymore. Patrick saw what I saw. It has been a bad run defense. There was a
tits?
No.
Oh,
I mean, they were wearing a shirt, but she was very pretty. She was coming from behind you, so you didn't get to see her. Sorry about that. So anyway, no, it is a close. I think in this game, it's not a KC blowout. It's a close game where Philly's able to keep running the ball. They don't have to panic. They don't have to put the game into Hurts' hand, but they're successful. They're successful when they get away from it on the over the middle stuff to the tight ends. And obviously both teams have to be great in the red zone. So I think any sort of SGP on that would be like field goals under. Obviously Mahomes MVP, field goals under, the game over. I think that's her again. Jesus. She's wearing like a black sports bra. Must be warm down there. It's not that warm up here.
It is 80 and somewhat humid.
What would you throw else? What else would you throw in there? Because obviously Kansas City is
honestly in this
probably
world
anytime touchdown scorers.
In this world, I'm live betting the over like my life depends on it. I'm playing the second half over like my life depends on it, and I'm live betting Mahomes MVP at whenever the Chiefs are down.
Whenever they're losing,
yeah, because this is a score and answer type of environment that we're talking about. If we get 50 points in this game, it's score and answer. It's not one way.
No.
And I think the world where that happens is Mahomes attempts over.
Don't know that.
Honestly, I would I feel like if this happens, it's because the Chiefs have caught Fangio with his pants down a little bit, right? They're like DeAndre Hopkins has been broadly featured, right? And
people are wanting to play with that.
Yeah, do you know what I'm getting at? Like it's if the Chiefs, I feel like if they have big time success, if they have comeback in them, it's going to be some surprises. Kelsey's overs probably get there, but I would kind of prey on the more absurd and find some alts and SGP those together. And I would just sit and wait. And I'm going to cover my ass on a Mahomes MVP bet on Super Bowl Sunday, unless this game is just out of hand, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I think if Kansas City's losing, that's the obvious. I mean, we talked about it before. We've talked about it again. We will do this in other Super Bowls if the Kansas City Chiefs are in.
We will probably have this conversation again at halftime.
Yeah, hey, we just bet this. We bet this MVP market live again. No, I like that. Mahomes MVP, Mahomes attempts over, game over. Probably Saquon 2 touchdowns. I'd say that he's, or at least I hate putting
longest rush over, maybe.
I hate putting minus legs in, but Saquon touchdown, Hurts touchdown,
longest pass completion for Hurts is probably good at that point. Longest rush for Saquon is probably good at that point, right? Because again, this is being reductive and this is compounding correlation, but I honestly don't think there's a world where this over gets there and the Eagles don't get into the high 20s.
Yeah, this has to be 28-27, 28-24. It has to be at least 24 points, I think, from the losing team. You don't end. I have one blowout scenario I want to lay on you, but it's kind of a left field one too. We'll get to that obviously. So yeah, it's not a scenario. This is not a scenario I love, even though, what did we just see in the championship games? We two pretty high scoring games, but I do have to admit the Washington defense sucks donkey dick, like terrible.
Well, yeah,
And
they also were their
they turned the ball over
fourth
3
game
times.
in a row on the road or whatever.
Yeah,
they were gassed.
They just were coming off the biggest win in franchise history since like the early 90s. I mean, that was the biggest win they've had in 30 years. Massive. Yeah, no, it's just such a different game here with these defenses. That is something, before we get into the two other ones, I wanted to kind of segue into. I see a lot of people playing props based on, hey, this team has done this. This team plays man. This team plays zone. This team is bad against tight ends. This team's bad against this. Like, I'm a little skittish about doing that. Maybe not in every football game, but in a game where we have Spags and Fangio, because I know they do get stuck in their ways a little, but with 2 weeks to prep, feels like they're both very liable to go, off tendency.
I love that you said this.
It feels like a bad way to handicap.
Even more than that, Andy, they have 2 weeks to prepare, and they prepared for each other 2 years ago. And there's not that much different. And so the idea that like this game is won or lost by whatever weird new wrinkles you can incorporate feels more likely than this team does this poorly and their weakness was taken advantage of. So I think you've got something there.
Yeah. And then moving into the we'll go Eagles over first. Moving into that, talking about the defensive coordinators, both of whom we have a lot of respect for, that have done some great things over the years, have had some, some really good teams, some really good defenses they put together. A part of me just looks at the rosters, looks at what they've done, looks at what they've done against other teams and said, I don't know if it's actually feasible for Kansas City to be like, hey, we had 2 weeks to figure it out, and we stopped the Eagles' run game. The Eagles' run game is not a factor in this game because we have Spagnuolo and we have a good front four. Like, there's just not.
This is the Eagles over quadrant, right?
This is the Eagles over quadrant because, and again, I know it looks a little towards like Eagles under, but again, it just turns into what we've seen all year where, all right, we're going to stop Saquon. We're going to do this. Oh shit, 65-yard touchdown. And then we end up, obviously it is a kind of like we said with the Kansas City over.
Okay.
The over
really
isn't
thought
going
about
to,
this, but yeah, okay. I'm there.
It's not going to be a Philly blowout. Like the Philly blowout, the only way that's happening is if Fangio puts together some magic and the secondary has, multiple, we're saying like 3 picks on Mahomes. These, young, exciting whites. And my God, Cooper DeJean looks like he's 14 when he's not wearing pads and stuff. I love that kid. But it has to be like a huge disparity in the turnovers. And it has to be a game where Philly scored a bunch of points early and then can just grind the clock out late, do the Kansas City do the Kansas City shuffle on them, play their own game in their second half. And it's like the Kansas City under when they're leading in the second half, but Philly does it. And I guess both of these scenarios are just Philly runs the ball effectively because we haven't really seen a lot of teams stop that. Philly covers effectively because when they were poor at that, they were injured. This is a fully healthy Philly secondary that looks a lot better than it did earlier in the season. Like so much of this is just Philly does what they've done all year because they can run the ball against a bad run defense. Kansas City is still not a team you're going to limit to like 10 points ever. So you end up somewhere in the, 28-21 kind of game. Like it's very close, possibly middles. I think a Philly over is closer to the total than a KC over where we have that back and forth that you can end up near 60.
Okay. You've twisted my arm. I hadn't really thought about that as sort of the way that Philly over gets there, but you've made a very compelling case.
Nick C with the comment of the year so far, because this is the reset for the DBs for next year. Comparing Cooper DeJean, he's like Ben Solak, but a defensive back. That's funny because Ben has looked like he's 10 for like he's been around for a while, guys. Like I was reading Ben's stuff a few years back, and
I want to say he was like Draft Network in the late teens.
Ben has like a painting in his attic of an older him, I believe. I think there's something nefarious going on. He's going to look like this for 30 years. Yeah, I don't know what's the SGP look like. It looks like Sam's chiming in here. Lipscomb saying, "Isn't the Philly over Hurts MVP?"
It might be. Yeah, it might be. I would even actually go so far as to say it is.
That's interesting.
Certainly, Mahomes' attempts is probably in there, regardless. Oh, yeah. Like if Philly wins, then Mahomes' attempts is in there, and it means that basically the Kareem Hunt under is probably in there, right? Like that just doesn't work. He just doesn't have any juice. It probably means that Travis Kelce under is in there because he just hasn't been able to, find ways to move the chains and keep the Philly offense off the field. It definitely means longest completion got there for Philly. It means longest rush probably got there for Barkley. And I would guess that it means I mean, you made a really good point that means the Eagles defense did some takeaways, got themselves some short fields. It means field goal unders did not get there, right? Field goal under, field goal over did not get there. Field goals went under, and it means probably means punts went under too. Because like if there's some fourth down stops, then that's another kind of way that leads into the Eagles getting this done. I think with that game state.
Yeah, I like what Sam's saying there because you did sell me. You sold me on the Saquon stuff. Like, and he flipped at a lot of books. He should be the favorite. He should be the most likely path to MVP if the Eagles do win. But in an Eagles over I don't want to say Eagles blowout. I think the version of a blowout is like winning by 10. It's not a game where they win by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Basically we're saying an Eagles comeback where they are like where these teams are like right around like last year's Super Bowl where they go to overtime and they're right around they're both 24-24 into overtime and one team comes out ahead. The idea of that being the Eagles feels not great.
No, and we talked about the explosives. We've seen some of the explosives be AJ Brown on, finding single coverage on the edge, and Hurts isn't good at times. He's not bad. Like Hurts is a perfectly fine quarterback who is a really good quarterback because he is in an offense that has an elite run game with an elite running back, 5 build-a players from like Madden as his offensive line, and then 2.5 elite receiving options. And I only say that because Goddard was hurt for part of the season. Like Hurts on a different offense looks a lot different. And obviously the tush push is a big part of him just racking up rushing touchdown stats as well. And that, that's a big part of drive success as well. Just making sure those fourth downs come in. It doesn't hurt that they're aggressive on those, but like it feels like there's a couple of those explosive plays on the edge to like Brown, Smith, maybe even the tight ends, Calcaterra. Somebody has to break a couple of those, and then Hurts' numbers look a lot better. And then it basically comes down to like who ended up with the short yardage touchdowns. That if the Eagles win, it kind of feels like did Barkley run a couple in from the 8? Or was it a tush push touchdown? And that's what flips the MVP. So maybe if you're doing that SGP, you do both. Because it feels like in an Eagles win, it's about 70-30 Saquon. But if they're scoring a lot, it's maybe closer to 60-40.
I would say you leave MVP out altogether and you just do an Eagles alt number at that point, right?
Like that. Yeah, Eagles minus 6.5. All right. The last one. Eagles and the under.
Okay, finally we get to the actual outcome.
Yeah, this is the outcome. So again, the Eagles have the run success against a bad rushing defense, but they just, explosives aren't random, but they kind of are a little bit. It does take sometimes it's just one safety out of position, and you stack the box. He gets through that second level, and I guess he's very fast. He's quite fast. And he's very sneaky. So you end up with Saquon having a good game, not a great game. And I think a lot of this is probably the same thing that Patrick alluded to. The over 4.5 sacks is a big part of this because Mahomes needs to end up on his ass a bunch. The tackle positions are a big problem against the pass rush. The coverage is good. We finally realized like, oh, they don't actually have good wide receivers. They've been, they got the gadget guy, they got the ancient tight end who can crop up once in a while, and then some guys that they haven't been super comfortable using in big roles. They've traded for players and not used them in big roles. It's been kind of a work in progress that they haven't figured out all year. So Mahomes probably is throwing a lot still in this scenario, but it's unsuccessful. The Eagles are running a lot, and it's successful, but not in the explosive manner. And there's probably a lot of sacks, a lot of field goals.
Yes, and I will admit that I don't expect a ton of explosives out of the Eagles. I just expect general workmanship, workman-like matriculation from the Eagles' rushing attack, because that's all that Spagnuolo allows. But I do think that will happen. The other legs that I want in this are Butker field goals over. I want Hurts attempts under. I want Hurts attempts alt under. I want under 20 attempts for Hurts in this game. I want Mahomes attempts over. I want Mahomes yards under. And I'm literally I think this game has been played. And it was Eagles-Ravens. And you can look at that box score and basically just reconstruct that in a way that pays 500 to 1 if you think the Eagles the under gets home.
Yeah, there's a lot of these weird scenarios. It's kind of what I've been thinking about today. A lot of my mind has been going around these weird scenarios, trying to find some, because it's fun to bet and get good numbers on some of these props. But honestly, unless you find something that's just oh, that's wrong on these -110 both way props, they just don't do it for me. They don't move the needle. I love to have a bunch of long shots in any of these championship games like this. So I do want to find some, and the MVP stuff is so tough because it is really, really heavily weighted around 3 people. And I think, you do need to have a wild outcome for anyone else to get it. For a defensive player, it's just so hard to pick the right defensive player, because unless it's Chris Jones just blowing people up, there's a scenario where Chris Jones has a really good day. There's been a lot of defensive ends, defensive tackles, outside linebackers who have had elite days. And any film guy will tell you he had an elite day and he had 0 sacks.
Of course.
He was so disruptive that he had a teammate with 3.5, a teammate with 2.5. They forced 3 fumbles, and he was right there, but somebody else grabbed it. Sometimes, a big name like that just ends up being a disruptive force, but he doesn't get the counting stats. So if I'm playing on that scenario, not SGP stuff, I'm probably playing 2 or 3 names on that secondary, on that line. I'll shout out GRP, Karloff. You play some Karloftis, you play some Chris Jones, and the kind of same thing goes for the Philly one. If you think Philly is going to be taking the ball away, you probably got to play both corners. Put some little bets on both corners, Dutch that. I think you got to cover some bases if you're playing defensive MVP long shots, and just kind of build a little a stable of it. We do have a question from Bavarian.
I just gotta tell you, man, if it goes Eagles under, it is super tough for me to rationalize the MVP not going to Barkley.
Yeah,
just because he's gonna get so much attention, he's gonna get so much work, and it's we're talking about an 11 for 19 kind of night for Hurts.
Yeah.
Barkley gets to 100 and scores a touchdown, and the Eagles win a low-scoring game where they had a 13-point lead at one point, and the Chiefs score late to make it close. Right? That's kind of what I think that's the most likely game state we're heading for. And I would also kind of add, in this universe, it's such a team effort for the Eagles that no one really gets the credit for stopping Mahomes, right? And it has more to do with just the fact that when they needed to get the hard yards inside the 25, they just don't have a guy that could do it against this defense. So I don't know. It's I think that's the most likely outcome we're headed for, and I would take action accordingly by playing Barkley MVP. But at this point, if you don't already have it, you've missed the best of the number, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and the question from Bavarian Hodler here is asking about, is there a path for Goddard, Smith, or AJ Brown for MVP? So, like, Cooper Kupp did win this a couple years ago. Obviously, Edelman won it in 19. Even in in the comeback a couple years before that, obviously, it was Brady. It's so hard for a quarterback not to win it. Kupp had 2 touchdowns, and I believe one was pretty meaningful. I'm gonna have to
and he also doesn't win it if Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't tear his ACL.
Yeah,
like he was dominating that game.
The problem with taking any of those guys is it doesn't. I think it's really hard to pick one of the 3. I mean, if there's an obvious one, but his number is obviously lower than the other 2, and to make that choice, like, that person has to score 2, maybe 3 touchdowns. And I think there's a lot of scenarios where AJ Brown has 2 touchdowns, and if Jalen Hurts threw them both and runs one in, AJ Brown still isn't winning that. Whereas maybe you could, if you really like AJ Brown's chances, you play him most receiving yards, you play him 2+ touchdowns, some props like that instead of MVP, because it just the odds of Hurts converting a couple 4th downs and maybe one of those short touchdowns are so good that Hurts with 2 touchdowns plus a rushing one kind of trumps. It's either, he's the only receiver that catches touchdowns or he has like a crazy game winner. And that's just so hard to map that out. So it's tough for me to get behind any of the receivers, honestly, on both teams. I do have some Kelsey at a bigger number, but like, I'm not jazzed about that. A tight end's never won Super Bowl MVP. Obviously, tight end was a different position 30 years ago. Like, it was Dan Campbell, for Christ's sakes. Like, it wasn't these guys that are getting 100 catches. There was no Brock Bowers in 1984.
I saw a famous tight end last night at Commander's Palace, Mr. Rob Gronkowski. He bowled his way in to get his veal chop, and he looks great, man. He still got it. He can play today.
What's your favorite Gronk moment? I have one. It's clear as day.
Ironically, my favorite Gronk moment was in a loss to the Broncos in Denver. Like, they could not cover Gronk in that game in any way, shape, or form. And I was like, wow, he's reached another level. And the Patriots ended up losing that game. The Broncos went to the Super Bowl and I believe beat the Panthers that year. But yeah, what's your favorite Gronk moment?
When he was on that New Year's Eve, it was Steve Harvey, and he picked up the Steve Harvey bust that was made out of Legos, and he just spikes it.
I love it.
And Steve Harvey was like clearly mad about it. Like, and Gronk just didn't care because he'd been
Gronk smash.
Yeah, basically just like smashed a Lego figure of Steve Harvey for I mean, that was kind of a signature spike, but Steve Harvey didn't see it coming. That's my favorite moment for sure. He is a human Spuds McKenzie. I don't know any other crazy long shot shit you see happening offensively, prop wise. I know props been covered pretty well by everyone else.
I guess I'll just say this: I'm probably gonna end up playing some Eagles alts here, because I do think there's a world where the big story that comes out of this Super Bowl is like, oh, the Chiefs actually weren't very good and they were never really tested. And they finally ran into a team that was peaking at the right time, that was extremely talented. And I honestly think that the Eagles defense might just absolutely wreck this offense. I just don't understand or see what is special about this Chiefs offense that isn't kind of clouded with like bias of how they have done in this moment in years past. And Or the fact that they won 2 playoff games that were both pretty freaking coin flippy, and they happened to be at home for those games. And this is a different beast. I think this is a mismatch for the Eagles. So I'm gonna play some absurd, ridiculous shit like Chiefs don't score a touchdown and shit like that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm kind of in agreement there, based on how bad they looked against Houston in the playoff game. The fact that Josh had the ball and could have won that game, and I think Josh tripped over his own dick more than Kansas City did anything there. Josh looked rattled early. He looked better in the middle of the game. He looked rattled much later in the game. Somebody said bridge jumpers. Do you have any bridge jumpers? I've seen a few like on the timeline of people like getting no doink.
Look, man, there are years where I don't think there's an edge in the Super Bowl, and I get more intrigued by the bridge jumping. This year is not one of those. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe there's a bridge jumper that makes sense to someone out there, but I don't know. I'm keeping it simple this year, man. I think the Eagles win.
Yeah. I'm gonna play a terrible teaser. Eagles teased up to the 7.5, and then the total, push it up. I'm teasing the total. I'm bringing it back to like 2018, Andy. I used to do this every primetime game when I didn't have a bet. I didn't have anything I'd like. If I just take both of my leans on the side and total, and I'd tease them, and that shit worked like way too often at teasing totals. So
your ass is exposed to 56 as a key. I wouldn't worry about that.
I'm not worried. Well, maybe we'll do a 7-point teaser. It's only juice if you lose on this one.
Yeah, if it's getting to 56, it's getting to 66 in my opinion.
How have our Super Bowl hunches done in the last few years?
In the last 5 years, here's my history. Ready? Last year, I was doing a lot of media here, explaining to people why the Niners were favored, and inevitably ended up being like they probably will win, and I was wrong. The year before that, I was like, I cannot believe the sports books are giving us a chance to double our accounts on Mahomes as a dog against an Eagles team that has never been here before, that has played a weak ass fucking schedule. And I felt very lucky to get that home. It was extraordinarily lucky. The year prior,
Rams Bengals.
I had the Rams in the Calcutta. It was the biggest win of my life. I was nervous as motherfucker that whole week and miserable doing content. I was like, I like the Rams, but at this point, that doesn't make sense to put any more money on the table because I am pre-rolling them to win. And so I was basically making the case for Cooper Kupp MVP at 4-1, and that hit also. So that one was spectacular. The year prior, I was like, Mahomes will find a way. I don't care if it's in Tampa. I don't care if they don't have an offensive line. Mahomes is unbeatable, and this Bucs team was kind of fluky getting here, and the Bucs turned out to be the Monstars, and I lost my ass. Except that I did have a big, heavy stake on Mahomes' attempts over that year, and it got there because they did not review an interception that was an interception late in that game. So I got very lucky that night in that regard. But I should have gotten absolutely wiped out in the Bucs-Chiefs Super Bowl. And then the year before that was Chiefs-Niners, right?
Niners again, yeah.
That one was, I was on Chiefs Island that year saying that Mahomes is special and this was going to be his coronation, and no one believed me. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm going to lose in the fourth quarter. And I looked at the live market and the MVP, and you were like, I'm betting Mahomes MVP is coming back. And I was like, all right, I'm fucking doing it too. Freaking Thelma and Louise moment here, buddy. And
they won by like 11. I mean, that score is not indicative of, I think it was like 30 to, I don't know, 30 to 20 something.
If Jimmy G completes that pass to, or if they don't call a penalty on the pass to George Kittle in the first half of that game, then the Chiefs lose.
So I've been retired donators talking about the Fangio prevent. I've been back and forth on this because it has looked like that it's the bend but don't break, but also,
but like maybe kind of break.
it also like forcing the turnovers it's been able to force. Like it kind of makes up for all the yardage that they give up in some of that soft zone. It's like, well, I guess I don't care about that because then they just picked them off 3 times. Or, they were in the right spot and they looked great in the red zone again.
Yeah, I think I would just hang my head on the red zone defense in general and say that the Rams, I think the Rams comeback was a hair fluky. I still feel like I was taking mushrooms watching that game. I don't understand how the Eagles didn't win and cover going away there. So the Eagles Rams game. Yeah, I don't understand how that thing landed 6. I'm still pretty upset about that, honestly. And in fact, if that had not happened, I don't think I would be realistically considering coming back on Mahomes MVP if they're down.
What do you think of the market? Someone asked if you like the Eagles, do you bet it now or do you wait for a better money line number? This is a market, especially now with legalized betting, and there's so much more money coming into the market that is visible and not just through Vinny, the bookie at the local Elks Club. The public can have a say here, and it feels like the public will bet red.
I agree with that. If this was a rando Sunday night football game, I would say that I think the Eagles are going to close favorites, but it's not. And volume will matter. And honestly, like, again, all of the narrative that's being spun here media wise is like, yeah, the Eagles are amazing. And this is going to be a really tough test for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have Mahomes handicap over.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one of the weirder / weaker, like the surrounding cast, the supporting cast. Because if you remember back to that Super Bowl, this matchup 2 years ago, that was a run game that could really get it done. Like Pacheco was good. It was a different team. It had probably a better offensive line. You had more continuity and
and if there wasn't a rookie move fumble 6 by Hurts, the Chiefs aren't winning that game. I have very strong opinion of that.
Yeah, that was a big EPA play or EPA swing, obviously. It was probably a 10-point play, which obviously flips the what was that score?
Also, Sirianni peed down his leg a little bit too. And so I'm just like, again, like I'm kind of confident in the Eagles and all of the intangible stuff that I completely acknowledge checks the box for Chiefs. I am like, well, but does it? Like, this is a coach that's been here before. This is a quarterback that's been here before. This is a team that largely is like, players who feel like they have unfinished business. Like, I don't know that this is going to be a tight Eagles performance at all. Now, if they lose this game and we get a third one of these next year, which who the fuck knows, then then it might just be there in their heads. But this has
Buffalo next year.
Yeah, I think of it. Yeah, like next year. Yeah, I mean, a third one of these, maybe I feel differently, but there is a massive, massive whiff of unfinished business for the Eagles, and Chiefs have not realistically been tested to know that they can go toe to toe with the team that's this good. And I don't even think I would have made this case if it was any other team besides the Chiefs, but I'm happy to get the Eagles.
I wish you could put this into it's ambiguous and it's hard to grade, but I wish you could put this into a SGP. It's just like Mahomes MVP, Chiefs money line, Sirianni does something fucking stupid, something indefensible. Like,
can we get Sirianni fights a fan in a win?
Actually, somebody DM me if you've seen any Big Dom props. I know they have a lot of that where it's like, will they show? God, who's the guy from The Hangover? He's a Birds fan. Bradley
Cooper, sure.
Well, I remember that from 2 years ago. Will they show Bradley Cooper? I want to see over 1.5 times on Big Dom.
Over 1.5 gang appearances. Are we going to see the gang?
We might see. I'm sure they'll have the Taylor Swift props as well. Donator is just Donator has had strong opinions lately on the timeline.
I
which
wish
I'm
I wish I
fine
could
with.
tell you. I wish I could tell you that I had anything different to say. I do not think this Chiefs team is any good.
They're
I
very
don't.
good. They're a good team. They're a great team. I don't know if they're the better team.
They're a team that knows how to win ugly, which is dangerous. But there's been lots of those throughout the years that have had legendary quarterbacks that have gotten their freaking shit pushed in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
And I'll let you get back to New Orleans. I think we kind of I covered what I wanted to cover. Somebody asked if we had anything on the anthem or the Gatorade. I mean, if it's Philly, they have yellow and green essentially, but they also have clear because they have water. Both teams have water. You never know; they could grab the wrong one. Clear is like 8-1 or better. That's worth a tickle if you have some credit or something.
I have a little bit of inside information. Apparently, Kendrick Lamar is doing the halftime show.
Yeah. We did secret pod play. We need to have a pod play. Heads or tails. Secret pod play is Eagles first half team total over.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I'm in.
I'd said something you agree with. Yeah. Cal is tweeting about this. BetOnline has a Donna Kelsey cleavage prop. And he legitimately messaged me because I asked him about it. He's like, man, I'm not. He's like seriously on Google Images looking up pictures of Donna Kelsey at games.
All right.
Said he hasn't seen the girls out.
Ironically, he has not seen them out?
No.
Oh, that's a bummer. So that prop is probably just soft. Then okay.
It's a one-way prop at 10-1. You can't bet the no.
There's going to be a lot of opportunity to gather intel for me tomorrow into Friday, and I will share it with you to share with the Deep Dive Discord members in Calhoun as appropriate.
Correct. Yeah. Somebody did ask for waste management bets. It's not that I've been hot on. I did have a nice week last week on some of the top 20 prices I played. But it's funny because in the newsletter on Tuesday, it was a guy I was kind of in love with early in the week that I'm not out on, but I'm less in love with Corey Connors. But I did play Corey Connors at like 50. I played Sahith Thigala, who has zero form coming in. It's a weird one. He has played like shit. He's not any good. Right now, the last time he played decent was like in the Bahamas in the swing season, but he has always played well here. He just comes here. He doesn't have to be in form, and he plays well. He almost won this a couple years back. Unfortunately, the people he was dueling with down at the end of the tournament were Scheffler and Schauffele, and he just was third fiddle there, man. He couldn't hang on the last couple of holes.
What's the?
I bet Tom Kim as well.
What's the price on 16th hole? In one, yes.
Jeremy has a lot of.
I don't know on that specific hole. I'm sure someone has it. I'm guessing hole in one is probably like a dog because you don't get one every year for sure. And
what a bummer they're going to San Francisco next year instead of back to Arizona. God damn. That'd be so fun to go back. I really had a great time.
I think we should just go to the tournament. Let's just go to the tournament.
Well, we're gonna do Pebble Beach, which apparently is dying. Did you see those stories?
Yeah.
Is it dying?
So we rent a house with a pool, and we do Super Bowl content from the pool in Scottsdale again, and then just go to the tournament a couple days because it's very fun. I played top 20s on Clanton, Novak, and Keith Mitchell as well. From 250 to 300. Those are ties chopped.
Djokovic is playing golf now?
No, Novak. Andrew Novak. Great story. Love the kid. Look him up. And then late ad could not get away from Maverick McNeely. West Coast guy, playing good par 5 player, good ball striker, good everything. He doesn't seem to have a big weakness in his game other than he's just not he's not in that top echelon again, but this is a course where a good ball striker can put himself in the mix. So Mav McNeely.
Oh, I love this.
Late ad, guys.
Oh, great tips, Sandy. Fuck yeah.
So let's if you have someone in the mix, I've always said you should bet more outrights than you think you should for the Waste Management. Nothing is better than Super Bowl Sunday waking up and sweating a golf outright from like 9 a.m. to like, an hour and a half before the game. I can remember being in a bar all day long. This was years ago. You'd have to look how many years ago, because I had Hideki Matsuyama. This is probably 7 or 8 years ago when he won it, and it went to a playoff. And so I'm sweating. I'm like, oh my God, are they going to switch this off because the game's going to start? Like, you have to keep one TV on the golf. I need this guy to win.
Speaking of sweating, man,
it's elite.
I'm out of my my adult beverages out, and they're not serving me because they're annoyed I'm taking a table to do a podcast. So I'm gonna hit the bar, enjoy the rest of Super Bowl week, and we'll be live for halftime. I'm fired up, and I'm prepared to eat some. I'm prepared to eat some bird gang crow. I'm prepared. So hopefully the Eagles are up and they've scored 16 or 17 points by that point. And
do a fly. Do a fly.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Bird gang, let's go. Let's go. Yeah, it's rare that I have a strong opinion on the Super Bowl, and here we go.
See you guys at halftime.